Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be exploring another visual, and this time it's going to be the slicer visual. So what I'll be doing in this video is looking at the slicer visual with three types of data, or four different scenarios. So the first one's going to be just using a simple text list and some of the setup examples you can use and some of the configuration options. Then we'll look at using dates. Then we'll look at using numeric values in a slicer. And then finally, we're going to go and look at using a hierarchy in a slicer. So that allows you to drill through and select values within a hierarchy. Okay, so let's get started. So the slicer visual is this visual here. And I'm just going to click it and it's going to add it in to our dashboard. So this is a really straightforward report. It's really just to get some data on the screen for us to interact with. So we've got a couple of cars across the top here with the work order hours and the work order count, and then along here we've got just a simple table showing a list of work orders, so a list of transactions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get work criticality. So that's going to be the one we're going to use here. So we want to be able to filter by the work criticality. So as a default, we can see we've got a list of the category values here, and the actual field value here has defaulted into this title here. So we can change this in two places actually. So we can leave it there, which I probably recommend because it's going to tie in with the actual column name in the actual data tables. So let's go into format, and we can see that under slicer header we can change this. So I'm just going to quickly change this and just delete the description. And that just tidies it up a little bit, makes it a little bit smaller. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So up at the top here, before we get into any more detail in this formatting pane, we've got options here to select either a list or a drop down. So a list is going to just give you a static list of all of the category values. And obviously, as you can see, that is going to be a list that is going to take up a bit of real estate here. So if you've got maybe 100 values here, or even into the tens and higher, you probably don't want to choose this option here. 4 is probably fine. The other benefit here is if you do select the values, so say we select safety and production, you can see at a glance which values have been selected in the slicer. So that's the advantage of that particular option there, the list option. The other option is drop down, which takes up a lot less space. It only takes up one line. Now if you open it up, you then get to see the list of values here. Now if you select one value, it's great because you will see that value selected there. However, if you select more than one value, it's going to go and just show this multiple selections. Okay, so you need to weigh it off against seeing which values are selected at a glance and the space it's going to take up on your report here. Okay, so that's the difference between these two values here, and then you've got this rubber here that, or eraser in America, but this clear filters here that just clears it all off. So let's go in and look at some of the formatting options. So under general, we've got the normal X, Y, and width and height, etc. But we've got these two options here, outline color and outline weight. So I'm just going to change this outline color to something completely different so that it stands out, and that's going to be this big bright red color here. And I'm going to change the weight. I'll just leave the weight as a 1. And then we'll go back to the slicer, and nothing seems to have happened. We're opening this up and nothing seems to have happened. So that outline color is actually set. Let me just slip back on here. When we go in and look at the options under the slicer header and the items. So if I go under slicer header, down here we've got this option here called outline. Now at the moment it's set at none. And you've got the option for bottom, top, so sort of various positions. So you can choose each one of these. So what it does, if I choose left, it doesn't really matter which one, is it actually in the slicer header here, in fact actually let's use bottom only. It actually adds an underscore here. Okay, so I've never really thought about using it or used it before, but that might be something that you can use, and it's just really so that if you're in here looking at these options and you start selecting that outline color and nothing seems to happen, then this will only appear once the outline option here has been selected. Now similarly with the items, there's an outline here, and you can add in, well, let's do the bottom only, and we can see that they've been underlined. Okay, so if it fits in with your design of your dashboard, then great. I've never really used it, and I think it's fine just as it is, but that's the outline configuration option. So I'm going to go and switch those off for just now by just reverting these to the default. Okay, so next we've got these selection controls. So they're fairly straightforward. If you just want to limit it to a single selection, then you can use this, and it'll be radio buttons that you'll see in both the drop down and also the list. So that can be useful if each one of these categories are exclusive. You don't want to be able to select multiple categories. You want to see them as being exclusive, and just look at one or the other. So that's a single category option there. The next option is multi-select with control. So at the moment you need to hold the control button down if you want to select multiple options here. However, it might be that you want it to be something that you can just add these checkboxes into without holding control. So you've got that option either way. I've no real preference either way. I think this is probably slightly easier from an end user's point of view. So I'd probably use that option most of the time if it's available. And then finally we've got this option that allows us to add at the top here a select all. Okay, so you can select all, and it also allows you to deselect all as well. So that's quite a handy option if you've got probably anything more than 4, 5, 6, 7 of these, and you want to be able to quickly select them all, and then perhaps deselect the ones that you're not interested in. It just makes it a bit quicker to interact with the actual values there. Okay, so slicer header. So in terms of descriptions, I'm going to go just make it slightly bigger here. We've got this slicer header here. So at the moment it is it will default to on, and it will mirror the value of the field that you've drawn into this field well here. So work order descriptions, so the work criticality description. So it's probably too big for me there, so let's go in and just go into the slicer header, and I'm going to get rid of that description. Now it is worth mentioning, I'm not going to cover it in this video here, but it is worth mentioning that this can be driven by a formula using this conditional formatting. So you can construct a formula that will actually give you a title there. I'll leave a link below to a video where I've done that before, so that you can understand a little bit more about how you would go about that. But I'm not going to cover that in this video here. We've got the color, we've got the outline, we've got the background, the usual stuff, and at the bottom here we've got this show summary is to be off or on. Now that summary basically adds on if you want to keep the title but also show what values have been selected. Okay, but unfortunately it will just say multi-selection, or if we go to drill down here, yeah, it's not available here for the drop down. But if you've got a list and you select one, it will just tell you which one it is. But if you've got a multiple selection, it's just going to default to that multiple selection. It doesn't concatenate each one of the options that has been selected. But that option is available there, particularly if you've got a radio button. So if you've got a radio button, you can only select one anyway, so it's going to be obvious. So yeah, that option's available. If we scroll up here again, and of course you can switch that on and off if you want to. I'd recommend you definitely switch it on, but perhaps make it slightly smaller. So let's make this 10. Okay, so that's a slicer header. Next we're going to look at the items. So these items are the actual, each one of these values that's displayed in the list. So we can change the color, and we can make it, I didn't change it too much. Yeah, we can see we can play a bit with that colour there. I'm just going to leave it as it was for just now, but that's available. And obviously the background can be changed as well, and that's going to change the background for each individual row there. So just revert that to the original colour. So that's fine. Where that would come in is if you've got a background and you might want to have this standing out against a background. You might want to change those colours there. or if you've got certain colours that are related to your colour scheme, obviously, then that would be it. So fairly straightforward. The title itself, so you can actually add in an additional title that sits above this slicer header here. So I would say that using the slicer header has got far more benefits. For one, if you use this title instead of this slicer header here, then you lose the ability here to automatically delete the selection options and reset the filters, which I think is quite a handy one to have. But apart from that, it's slightly offset or slightly over to the side. But for my slicers, I would typically just use this slicer header instead of a visual header, which this is here, this title here. So I'm going to switch that back off. There's no other options here. There's normal stuff just to set the alignment, etc. But apart from that, that is it for the title header. And that's pretty much it, really. The other options here is to set a background. All of this is fairly obvious stuff. So that is a little bit of a discussion around the options if you've got a category and a list of values, list of text values, and you want to add them to a slicer. Okay, so another option I want to just quickly look at here is the orientation of this list here. Okay, so just now it's vertical because we can see we've got a vertical list of values. If you go into Format and go to General, we've got an option here which is available whenever you choose a list. So it's not available if you use a drop-down. You can see it's disappeared here. So whenever you choose a list, there's this option here under orientation to have vertical or horizontal. Okay, so at the moment it's got a list of, we've changed it to horizontal. We can turn on this responsive, and we can see here that it's going to be like a card for each of the different values. Okay, now responsive, we'll try to turn these into, or fit them either as a matrix or as a row, depending on the amount of real estate that's available. Okay, so that's another option. If you want to make it look a little bit more interactive and have your values, you know, along the way rather than up and down the way. Now, it will depend on the visualization you use. The one that I've created here, and if you want to be able to create this dashboard, there's a free course below. I've used it here because it fits nicely in with the actual cards above. So you can select these here, okay, and it'll filter it through. Okay, so that's the options that are available if you use a slicer with a text value, a list of text values. Okay, so next we're going to look at using dates in slicers. So let's add a slicer in here, and I'm going to add in the scheduled start date, and we'll make it a lot smaller. So we can see straight away that the first thing it's added in here is a to from. It's defaulted to the to and from dates, but it's added this slider here. Okay, so this is called a slider, and it allows you to go and actually slide the dates from a start date to an end date. Now, I don't particularly like this slider, so I tend to go and disable it. And how we do that is we go into Format, and there's an option there, Slider, and you just turn that off. Okay, so now that's out of the way, we can see that as we try and make it a little bit smaller, the responsive feature for this visualization is on. So that's the second thing I tend to do, is switch that off. So under General, we've got this responsive option here. So I'm going to switch that off. And we can see it's just defaulted to the actual size that we've set for the header there. So talking about the header, we've also got the option to place an outline under the header like we did in the previous one. So if I was to select that and make it red, and then we go to our visual header, we've got the option here to add in an outline. So that's the other thing we've got there. And also in the header we can make it slightly smaller. So let's make it 10. And then we can obviously change the header text and also change the font in the background. Next we've got the date inputs. So at the moment we can change the color of these inputs here. We can maybe make a font slightly grayer, slightly less subtle. But yeah, it's just the normal sort of configuration options. we've got the slider, we've turned that off, so nothing really to talk about at the moment. So let's go in and explore this option up here, the type, select the type of slicer, because there's far more options here. So if you had a category with just a list of text values, you're pretty much two options. There's a drop down or there was a list, but there's lots of options here. So we can obviously choose between, we can choose before if you want to select a static date that says anything before this actual date. We can choose a before. We can choose an after, and that might be quite useful for scheduling work in showing anything after a certain date. So let's just say this was the start of 2021 or whatever. So each one of these would be configured for the particular visual that you were configuring. Then we've got the list. Probably not that useful for dates. It might be useful if you've got a list of years or whatever, but not for a specific date there. It's going to be a massive list there. It's going to be probably pretty awkward to work with. Then we've got the drop down, which is pretty much the same. And then finally we've got this relative date and relative time. Now we don't have a time dimension here, but we've got a date. And we can see here that, I'll just make this a little bit smaller, doesn't need to be so big. We can look at the last, the next, or this. So say we might want to look at the last two, and it might want to be calendar months. Okay. Now let's look for the last 6 calendar months. How are we setting ourselves up and how much work has been scheduled? Or for the scheduling report looking forward, we might want to look at the next 6 months to see how that's looking, how many hours we've got planned in each one of these weeks moving forward into the future. So this is a really useful one. Now as soon as you select this one, a second option becomes available in the format pane that I wanted to just talk you through, and it's this date range here. Now under here you can choose to include today. So today's date is the next 6 months. Today's date is not the 1st to the 12th. Oh, that's because I've chosen calendar months. Okay, let's choose months. Today's date is the 13th. Okay, so we can see it's the 13th of November. And you might want to, and that's because we've included today, but you might want to start this as of tomorrow. Okay, in which case you can opt to switch that off. Now the other thing you can do is you can use this anchor date. So as a default it will be from today or tomorrow, depending on whether you use this toggle here. But you might want to put an anchor date in here, which you might want to say, actually I just want to have this looking forward for 6 months as of the start of this month. There we go. Okay, so we've started it off from the start of the month. It looks like this is defaulted to US date format, which is month, year, date in year. But basically what we've done is we've anchored this date to the start of this month. We'll include today, and that takes it to the start of the month. Okay, so unfortunately, and I think this will come at some point in the future, unfortunately this doesn't have conditional format in here for you to calculate that date, because I can really see an option here where you'd want to basically calculate the start of the month and always look forward 6 months, but from the start of the current month or the start of the current week. But at the moment this is going to have to be hard coded in here, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be some conditional format in here that's going to let you calculate that at some point in the future. So that is pretty much all the options here for the using a date in a slicer. Okay, so next we're going to be looking at adding a numerical value to a slicer. So let's go in and we'll add that in here. So we've got a slicer. Now the data here is a list of work orders, and we've got a list of this is all open work orders, and we've got here the planned hours or the remaining hours that are related to each one of those work orders. Now in this scenario we want to be able to filter down perhaps work orders that have got a lot of hours associated with them. So look at a range of work orders based on how many hours they've got associated with the actual work on that work order. So I'm going to pull this remaining hours in here, and we can see similar to the date, we've got this slicer here, and then we've got the values here from 0 up to this value here, which is 66 0.84. Now this corresponds with the highest and the lowest values, which is really handy to give us a starting point here. So that's a good feature here. However, again, I don't like this slicer, so we'll get rid of that for just now. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go into this slider, and I'm going to just remove it, switch it off. So let's start looking at some of the options here. We've got an outline again, which is going to just add an outline to this title here. We've got this responsive. So again, if we make it a bit smaller, it'll attempt to respond to that. Now I'm going to switch it off for just now. And as you can see, it's defaulted to the actual size that we've defined for this particular visual for the title. So let's go and go into our slicer header here, and we'll make it a little bit smaller. So these things are exactly the same as we've discussed before: the title, the font, this outline, etc. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. Numeric inputs, again, it's just understanding how we can configure the title, the background and the input boxes and values there. Got the slider. So pretty much everything there is pretty straightforward, and we've covered it before. So let's go in here. We can see you can have a list. That's just going to give you a list of all the values that are in this this table here for the remaining hours. We've got a drop down. We've got this between, and then we've got this less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So this allows you to again filter if you say, well, okay, I only want to get something that's greater than a certain number. So, or less than a certain number. In fact, we're more likely to be greater than a certain number. So greater than or equal to, and I'm going to say 1000 here. Okay, so we can see we've got 32 work orders that have a value which is greater than 1000 man hours associated with those, and that accounts for these 71,000 hours here. So, and you could probably work out percentages, etc., to see how much that is as a percentage of the total, and see if it complies to the Pareto's 80-20 principle. So this really similar to a date. There's not much else to talk about here. Okay, so the next option we're going to talk about is going to be using a hierarchy. Okay, so finally we're going to look at hierarchies. So let's go and we'll add in a slicer. And I am going to go and search for department. And then I'm going to search for discipline. Discipline, here we go, work order discipline. And I'm going to add it in here. So what this does is it creates a hierarchy that you can apply filters to. So not only can we select it at this level here, but we can actually go in underneath maintenance, and it makes it dead straightforward to just go and select mechanical maintenance. And maybe you want to look at mechanical, instruments, inspection, and electrical. So I've held down control there, and we've been able to select multiple values within maintenance. Okay, so it just keeps it nice and compact. It means you don't have to use two slicers, and allows you to create this hierarchy that you can use. So a couple of options here. The first one is the selection controls. So multiple select with control. I'm going to switch that off, so we've got these little check boxes here. Now we don't need this select all, because by definition if you select that then you are using that select all anyway, so there's no point in selecting that. And then you've got this this expand and contract box here. Now you can configure a little bit more about the look and feel of this, so let's just go into our items, and if we scroll down we've got the normal stuff that we had before, but we've got this option here, stepped indent. And this just allows you to configure how stepped the actual hierarchy is. Okay, so depending on how you're doing for space, 15 is probably fine, maybe even 10. Okay, and then the expand collapse, we've got the option to put a chevron, which I quite like. You've got this plus minus, which is also pretty good, or you've got this this one here. So just depending on your preference, there might be some standards you've got in your company and other reports, etc. So just make sure that each one of these is fairly obvious to an end user. They're not going to get confused, and these are used all the time on websites and other applications. So yeah, there's a few options here. The other one we've got is if we go up to the title, so the slicer header. So let's just call this department, and at the bottom we've got this show summary option. So if I switch that on, what that will do, if I just make it a bit bigger, is it will show you the value that's been selected. Now if you select more than one value, for example, if I select this value here, it's going to default to this multi-select. In fact, I'll make it a little bit smaller. Okay, multiple selections. But if you just choose one value either at that at the first level or the second level of the hierarchy, so if I choose just one value here, it will actually expand it. So it's a little bit big. It's maintenance department and drilling discipline, but as soon as you choose two values, it's too much for it to concatenate and to show. So yeah, this is available now. It's also available as a date. So if I go and just copy this, and I've got a date table here which has got lots of other ways or lots of fields related to a date. So I can create a date hierarchy with this table here because I've got it linked from a one-to-one relationship to this scheduled start date. So if I go into this value here, I'm going to remove these and I'm going to add in the year and I'm going to add in the month name. Okay, so this is another way where we might want to be able to go and just select anything in anything scheduled to start, or that was scheduled to start in 2019. Or I might want to look next year and see really quickly anything that's scheduled to start in 2020. Okay, so there's a few extra configuration options here because you want these to be displayed in date order, etc. So that'll be covered in a different video. I think we've kind of keep us focused on slicers at the moment. And just really finally, if you do have these blanks, you probably want to sort the underlying data out. But what you can do is you can actually apply a filter to a slicer. So you might want to come in here and under the year is just make sure that these blanks have been filtered out. Okay. Right, so I think that is us. So slicers used for categories, used for dates, used for numbers, and used in a hierarchy. So hopefully you've learnt something today. You've been able to take this and maybe tweak some of the slicers you've got, or at least build a bit of confidence when you're adding slicers to a report related to what options are available for you to set these up. So thanks for listening. If you found it useful, it'd be great to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest videos that I release more or less every week, then hit the subscribe button and hit the wee bell to receive a notification whenever I publish a video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.